Right, so first of all, from the minutes of the last meeting, there was a couple of action points just to draw your attention to. We did say to consider really carefully about learning coach turnover, and we know there's going to be changes year on year, but because of the outlay of the tier one training and the impact that that's had, the fewer people we can have new into the system, the less people we have to put through tier one training. We did ask you to check that all your school contact details was accurate, and that you'd got dates of birth and TRN numbers for your learning coaches in order to be able to claim the funding from the DfE for mentor training. And then I'm going to send out to you today a placement request form for next academic year. We use that to factor in how we recruit or continue to keep courses open for as long as possible, and also that you'd had the opportunity to give a training session last term to your associate teachers, where the SENCO would come and speak to them. I hope you've been able to do that. The agenda is just on the left-hand side, and we're going to go on with the first thing, which is course survey feedback. So first of all, let me just move forward. In a sort of change to what we'd normally do, what I thought I'd do rather than sort of give you the highlights is give you a few minutes to actually read the report itself. It's about 10 pages. We just put it in the chat. If you can't see it in the chat, can you just unmute and let me know? But if not, what I'd like you to do is just to open that document and have a really quick read of it. As usual, it's really, really positive. There's lots of great things being reported back, but what I'd like you to do is just read it, and then in about 3 or 4 minutes, we'll come back together. And if anyone's got any questions they want to ask about it or anything that we can do in terms of action points, then please do let me know. So I'm just going to be quiet now, give you a few minutes to read it. Okay, can you give me a wave if you're still reading or if we're all right to move on? Okay, lovely. So first of all, has anybody got any questions or any suggestions for things, actions that we can take as a result of that survey?
Paul, I just want to say sometimes I feel as though when they make comments like the learning coach was disengaged, which was, I know, further down, I think sometimes the associate teachers don't always realise how much we've got going on in the background. And, maybe something like that we need to take with a pinch of salt, that we are all juggling lots of other things, aren't we? And we can't always just instantly help them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're quite right. I mean, we do, and when we talk about professional behaviour at the beginning of the course, we do say all these things to them about appreciating that they're very busy and they've got a million and one things to do, and they're not their only priority. But then also, I think learning coaches need sometimes prompting in terms of making sure that when they have their weekly meetings that they do stick to that, and that they go somewhere where they're not going to be disturbed. And and if they do, there's a reason why they don't do that meeting for whatever, that they reschedule it. Catherine, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to come in there to say, because the surveys are deliberately not anonymised, so we can actually always go back to people and unpick those issues a little bit further. So where there are comments like that, the key thing is just going back and having those conversations with the individuals, so we can unpick a little bit, perhaps explain some of the rationale behind some of the decisions, and perhaps where there are issues, we would like to think that we wouldn't just be picking them up. And I think that's fair to say, Paul, isn't it, that any of these issues that have been picked up on the survey have been picked up throughout the placement and have been dealt with as we've been going through as well. And I think that's really important too, that it's not the first we're hearing about things.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily apply to secondary, but there've been a couple of comments on the primary survey that came up, and we went straight back to those and addressed them if they've rated the school experience low for whatever reason. Also, off the back of that, what we are going to do this year is put together a report for you as schools individually, so that anyone that you've had on placement in the foundation, the developing and the qualifying experience over the course of this year, we'll send you the feedback that's specific to your school, which I think will be really useful for you to show what positive impact you're actually having in the schools that you're in. Hazel, you've got one hand up.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, sorry, I was a little bit slow reading to the end there, but like some of the things that I think are probably like quite easy fixes that they're saying, like getting for the assignments, getting some like examples of, high quality ones, or, not so great ones. Can we get some bits and pieces off the cohort this year, so that we can use that to help the ones that come in next year, to say, okay, if you want some subject specific examples, this is what people in your subject area sort of did last year. Like that should be relatively an easy fix, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we have shared some exemplars for the assignments, but there's certainly an opportunity to share more. I don't know if Bob's actually with us at the moment or if he's in with somebody else, but if he is, maybe he could respond as well, as he obviously coordinates all the PGCE parts of the course. I think he's ducked out for a second, but yeah, definitely I'll put that in the minutes for exemplars for this year's cohort. Okay, any other questions? Perfect. Okay, what I'm going to do now is hand over to Maddie. This is Maddie Sladden. She is English associate teacher. She's currently on placement at Arthur Terry, and we've asked her to represent the cohort tonight and just give us some verbal feedback about how you've found the course. Now we're approaching the end, so if you want to just unmute and maybe talk to us all for a few minutes about your thoughts on behalf of the whole cohort rather than just your own.
Yeah, of course. So going from, sorry, I don't know if you can hear the tannoy. Going from the first placement to the second placement, I think a lot of people had found the first few weeks a little bit trickier as you're adjusting to going to a new place, having new students obviously that you're meeting in January. It's a bit of a funny time to come in and start picking them up and getting to know them. But apart from a few little rocky days, I think everybody adjusted quite quickly and quite easily to their second placements, which was really nice. And it has been, for everybody that I've spoken to, a really good learning experience. Obviously, a lot of the contrast in schools allow for you to have that kind of experience where you're meeting new people. Perhaps you're working in a different area or you're learning different content. For example, I was placed in a secondary school where the exam board is different to wherever it is in Arthurterry and the one that I did myself. So I had to kind of learn what skills I'm teaching the students in order to allow them to access their exam board, which was quite interesting for me to learn and be able to draw comparisons to myself. So everybody's found that really, really useful. I mean, we had to do the second assignment whilst on placements. That was due in the end of March, I believe, and that was really well structured. We got given a lot of time and a lot of information leading up towards that, and I think we only had one ITAP due whilst we were there. So that was really well structured and timed, and it was really manageable because we knew so far in advance what was going on. And then towards the end, we had a week, the last week of half term, that there was a little bit of confusion at the start because I think the general consensus was that we would leave our last placement 2 weeks before Easter and then have training and then be in different schools. But then we had 2 extra days on placement, which people got told at different times. So that was a little bit confusing and everybody didn't really know when we were finishing, or some people were in different days, other people weren't. For example, I finished on the Tuesday, somebody else had the Monday off for a meeting but was then until Wednesday. So it was a little bit confusing, I think, that bit. But then the primary school experience and the special school, from the other people doing English as well, we spoke a lot about the primary school placement, and that was brilliant. It was just really nice to see different primary schools. And then the special school, so I was in Kingsbury, but then New Horizons, their sixth form centre in Erdington, and the general consensus from absolutely everybody was that we all had an amazing time. It was really a really special place to visit. We were really lucky that we got the opportunity to go. So that really concluded our development placement on a high. I think it was really nice.
Brilliant. Anything to add about the VI training? Because obviously Emma is here. She was here.
Was really good. So that was on our last day, and we were in Pantsbrook School in Sutton, and that was really a really nice experience. We were all, I think a few of us had spoken before, we weren't really sure what to expect or what we were going to be going into, but it was really informative and it was really engaging. And I, coming back now to my placement, have got a student with a visual impairment in year 8, so it's been really interesting to kind of apply those strategies into my real life day-to-day teaching. Is that class?
Lovely. Thank you ever so much for that. I think I'm really pleased you talked about the transition and the difficulties with that, but the importance of that contrast as well.
Yeah.
Also really pleased to hear about the SPM and having ample time for that, because that's been an issue in previous years. We try to make the deadline for that as late as we possibly can. And also, I completely take on board what you said about the IPRs and whether you were supposed to be in school or not, because that I don't think was clear. So you're quite right there. We will rectify that one for next year. Any other things to add at all?
Not that I have anything from anybody else. Everybody's just sort of carrying on and getting on with it now.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Maddie at all while she's here? Okay, obviously, so we're coming to the end, and we'll have not only the course survey that we've just had, but we will have the sort of end of course survey as well within the next couple of months. So we'll include that in September's meeting, but we'll also include the feedback in the report that we give out specifically to schools. Okay. Right, moving on to the next thing then, is the evaluation of ITAPs. Now, we did, as Maddie said, last term, we looked at the strategic use of assessment, which included a range of different elements, really, which was including the AMTLP form, monitoring pathways, the lapping pause points and scaffold and upgrades, things like that. But I wanted just to consider, as professional coaches, with our involvement in the process, any sort of thoughts on our implementation of that, the communications behind it, the type of activities that took place in school, Then more importantly, the impact. So are our associate teachers better at those 5 elements that we've just looked at above? Have they now become habits in their practice? They're now not filling in AMTLP forms for every single lesson, but are they regularly considering the prompts to inform their lesson planning? Are they actively following a monitoring pathway, lapping for compliance and so on? Is that all happening as habitual in their practice? And then the third thing is the current ITAP, which is obviously happening at the moment. We're on day 3 of that. Any thoughts from you in terms of the implementation of that and the communication for that as well? And then what I'm going to do after that is share with you some sort of proposals for how we modify the ITAPs for next year. So I was going to ask you to put some comments in the chat. We'll have a few minutes to do that. So if you put 1 and then answer question 1 and put 2 and then answer question 2, and then I'm going to collate that and use that to inform going forwards. So if I mute for a minute and just give you some time just to, if you don't have to answer every question, if there's nothing to comment on, just answer the questions that you feel that you can say something about. And Maddie, you're welcome to stay if you want to, but if you've got other things to do, you are welcome to sign off.
Thank you. I was actually going to go and do some of the quizzes for the ITAP, so I'll leave. But thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Maddie. Cheers. See you later.
Bye.
Okay, it looks like everybody's stopped typing. I want to pick up on a couple of things there. First of all, it's really nice that you feel the information has been clear and that they've been fully briefed in what they know and what they're doing. I want to pick up on Helen's point, which is an excellent one about making sure that you know the details at the start of the placement, so you can factor that in when you're planning a timetable. I think that's a really useful thing actually to consider. And we're not actually going to change the structure. Well, we're not going to change the content of them so much, or the position of them so much next year either. So that should help. And then Hazel is quite right about the timing when we have assessment weeks and exams and things like that. We've tried with this one particularly to be quite flexible in that, you know, if you say, for example, if it was assessment week this week, we've done a list of FAQs, as you probably know, and so we've said, yeah, it's absolutely fine to do it the next week. I suppose the problem with that then is that then it means that associate teachers aren't doing it at the same time, and then that leads to your other issue that you raised. So yeah, it's interesting, but I would keep hold of all these comments. In terms of moving forward, next year, what we're going to do is, or what we're proposing to do, and we value your feedback on this, is to make sure that they're a bit more self-contained and a bit more tight in terms of the paperwork. So we're looking at the moment at producing editable PDF booklets, so that whether it be them making observation notes, whether they're actually planning lessons, whether you're observing them or their learning coaches observing them, that all of that information could go into one booklet. So they've actually got it as a package. So the learning coach could type into that booklet the observational feedback. They could type in their own reflections, like I say, so that actually it's all in one place. There's too many different bits of paperwork. So that was one thing to propose. The second one was to slightly extend the behaviour one, because I think what was missing from the behaviour ITAP was the actual opportunity to strategically observe expert practitioners in the placement school. So, and I know previously in years, and we probably still do a lot of it on their first day or couple of days, they do a pupil trail or a pupil shadow. So that gives them the opportunity in their own placement school to see 5 different practitioners managing behaviour. It's also a good opportunity, I think, from a whole school point of view. For you as professional coaches, you will know who your really strong behavioural practitioners are in your schools. So it's an opportunity to then be able to use that day to get them to see real expert practice. So that was something that I would want your support with. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that the second ITAP, which was about explanations and modelling, we've found that quite complicated to sort of pick apart and try to focus on what we really want to get out of it. And we're trying to simplify it a bit more so that it just becomes about effective teacher talk. Now, that might include explaining a task, that might include explaining a concept to students, it might include actual modelling, or it might not. So we're concentrating on effective communication, verbal communication of the teacher, which I think is a critical skill to get right in terms of clarity at the beginning of the course. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is about restructuring the second and the third one, because the subject input and then the core input and then the actions in school, the 2 days in school, were all a little bit jumbled. They came in a bit of a funny order. So we've decided to move the core training that we would have done on a Friday to the Thursday. So they'll actually do the core training with us in the centre on the Thursday. They'll do the subject follow-up on the Friday. And then the following week, the first 2 days of that next week, would be when they did the activities that are based in school. And again, I think that just packages it a little bit more neatly. So those are our sort of 4 proposals for changes to the ITAP. Does anybody want to unmute and make any comments or suggestions or ask any questions? I know, Anna, you were nodding quite a lot.
I like the restructure of 2 and 3, because I think it is just more focused. And when there's lots and lots of things going on, there's always an excuse not to do something. But I think it just gives you that, it's nice and packaged, and I think that will work really well.
Good. Yeah, we think so as well. And because they're not teaching very much in those points in the course, it's not going to be disruptive so much if they're not actually in school on the Thursday, was I think behind it.
And I think it stops that choppy changey bit that does naturally happen. So yeah,
there was too much
really
gap.
like that.
Yeah, there was too much gap, I think, as well, between each sort of phase of activity. So sometimes there was a week gap before they did anything ITAP again. So we've smushed it together.
Yeah, I like that.
Anybody else? Okay. Oh, that sounds good. That's good. Yeah, we think those things will make quite a significant difference, and it's also going to make us focus a little bit more on making sure that our training sessions are ITAP-y more so than our training sessions that are not ITAP. Is one other thing. Okay, so that's the ITAPs. We'll move on to the next item, which is about mentor training. And you obviously know the impact, like we said, the tier 1 impact has been huge in a much broader sense than we thought it was going to be. It's actually empowering people to train up whole primary schools, colleagues that are not learning coaches, subject departments. It's been massive, really. So the importance of the mentorship program or mentorship training actually is really powerful for school improvement, and it keeps people employed and happy, and it's also allowing, obviously, the most important thing is to get new people into the system and into education. So we've had approaching 100 secondary learning coaches who've completed that tier 1 training. For primary, it's about 62 have been through it as well, so it's massively impactful. And obviously you'll know that you can claim 7 hours and any further hours that they've had as learning coaches for training for this year, which is funded by the DfE, which we'll talk about in a minute. And as the West Midlands ITT partnership, the last time we met to discuss this, we all agreed that we were committed to making sure that the content of that tier 1 training stayed as a core element of mentor training. So we are, as we talked about in the last meeting, going to continue with that. And you'll need to consider, obviously, the placement offers, that what you can support with for September onwards, and also the number of new learning coaches that you're going to have to put through the tier 1 training. We've booked dates in for this now. The first date for the tier 1 training for anyone who's going to join as a learning coach for September is on Friday the 4th of July. So it's an ATLP training day, and that will be taking place at Anna Seawood Primary School in Lichfield. For those people that don't come to that, and it's done at that time to minimise cover, because it's later in the summer and it's a training day if you're in ATLP school. There is a mop-up date as well planned for the 19th of September. Prince Henry sort of spoke to Andy yesterday about a date for that, and we've just got to confirm a date for that. That's the first one. The other thing is that the curriculum, the understanding the SCIT curriculum, the Arthur Terry specific paperwork, curriculum, documentation, and all those kind of things, is a 2-hour session, which is face-to-face, and we've calendared that in for an afternoon, which is on Thursday the 18th of September. So just so that you're aware, any new learning coaches would need to take part in that as well. And then we're thinking carefully about the learning coach meetings that we have each term. They are subject specific, but we're also trying to deliver and upskill mentors in a range of different ways as part of that package. So we're just looking at the moment about how we're actually going to develop mentors and support them to get better if they're new, if they've been doing it for years, if they've been doing it for 2 years, just making sure that we can provide a bit more bespoke development for people. So that's something that we'll come back to talk about another time, but we are thinking about learning coaches not getting the same diet every year. So that's something that we're doing at the moment. I'm going to hand over to Catherine, who's going to talk to you about the mentor training grants, and obviously the most important bit, which is how you get the money. So there we go.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm going to keep it quite brief because I know we've talked about this in previous meetings, but actually I'm aware in the last week of head teachers are actually starting to get emails from DFE about this. So it's really important that you've had that conversation with your head teacher so that they know exactly what the process is, so they don't sort of get a bit carried away and start claiming for training that perhaps your mentors haven't done. So the DFE portal for accessing mentor funding is now open. And like we talked about, I think feels like forever, that each school will receive up to £876. So that's £43.80 per hour. So if you remember, mentors were originally tasked to do the 20 hours of training, but then that was changed, wasn't it, halfway through? So there isn't any mentors really who've done that full 20 hours, but there are mentors who've done a significant proportion. So you need to make sure that your schools are getting their funding back for that. What we're planning to do is send a letter to head teachers, and we're going to do that next week. And we're going to explain the process and also confirm how many mentor training hours your school should claim for. So don't panic if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't know how many hours my mentors have done. We've got all of that information. And the message really to heads is don't submit a claim before we've confirmed those mentor training hours with your school. Because what happens is once they submit that to DFE, that comes to us and we have to then verify and approve that you have then you're claiming for the right number. So we thought by putting that step into the process, it's going to make it a lot simpler for everybody. DFE have said they're going to audit up to 10% of those claims. So in terms of the evidence that they will want to see, I'm hoping really that our mentor training records and our registers are going to be enough for that. But, you know, and obviously the letter then that you receive from us will support that too. So just a bit of a message to go to your head teachers. Don't do anything before you've had the letter from us, but also don't do anything until you've had the invitation from DFE. They haven't all gone out together. They're doing it in a staggered process. So don't worry as well if your head teachers haven't received that letter yet. They haven't all come through. You'll sign in through your DFE sign-in access. So head teachers should be able to do that quite straightforwardly. And make sure as well you're only claiming for the ITT mentors. ECF mentors, that comes through a very different process. So make sure that, again, your head teachers are not confused about that. This is just the ITT mentors. Mentors may have changed their name. So when you're ensuring the name of the mentor matches their name on the teacher register. So that's just a little thing to be aware of. And the thing to do is to make sure before you submit it, and again, this probably isn't you, this would be somebody in finance, I would imagine, who you'd want to do this, that they will need your mentor's teacher reference numbers and your mentor's date of birth. I would imagine HR would have all of that information. So trying to save you guys a job, hopefully you can palm that off to your finance and HR teams. But like I say, make sure that you wait for that letter from us first. And we're hoping, because the last round of our Learning Coach training is on Tuesday, so we should then have accurate records by Wednesday of next week. So we should be able to get that out pretty quickly. Any questions, or is that straight? We're trying to make it as straightforward as possible to you. I think probably the best thing for us to do too is to send the email to the head teachers and copy in professional coaches too, so that you know that that email has been sent. Is that clear, or any other questions from anybody? Fab. Okay, great.
Lovely. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to just have a brief discussion about recruitment and social media. So we're about the same recruitment numbers as we were this time last year. We've got quite a nice breadth as well in terms of who we've recruited. So it's fairly even numbers across. Obviously, we've got a bit of a concern with RE because we haven't recruited anybody for that yet. So if there's anybody that you know or any contacts that you can reach out to, please do. The recruitment of languages has actually gone stratospheric. We've recruited 5 linguists for September. We've got a French and Mandarin, a French and Dutch, a French and Italian, another French and Italian, and a Spanish so far. And that's we've recruited another one today, I think. And then we've got another one coming to the Train to Teach event on Saturday, who we met online last night. Again, very strong. And then another 2 inquiries today. So obviously the limits with languages recruitment will be down to the capacity in schools. And the added complication, of course, is that schools don't necessarily always do French and Spanish. They sometimes do one or the other. Some offer German, which is something that we can do and have done. We're not going to offer a route in Mandarin yet, but there are schools that do Mandarin. I know Helen, Queen Mary's, you do. So
we do as well, Paul.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. Yeah, I forgot about that. So I just wanted really to just have a quick poll in the chat. If you could just put down for me if you can offer French, Spanish, German, a combination of both. I'm not going to hold you to it. I just want to have a straw poll really, so that when we're thinking about when we close languages, that will help us a little bit with that information. Last year, we had placement offers from schools. I think we could only really had 3 offers, and we had to sort of come back to you and see if we could expand our offer. So can I just give you a minute just to put in the chat French, German, or that you can't? Or if you don't want to say that, you could just not put anything in the chat at all. That's really helpful. Thank you. And again, we've got 5 to place. We have to factor in potentially if they teach 2 languages, they have a placement focusing on each, as well as being a contrasting school. So, but obviously, if you're unsure of capacity in terms of languages to support, then please perhaps go and have a conversation with your languages department, because recruitment to languages, as for ECTs and qualified teachers, is still really important that happens. Okay, so that's really helpful. Thank you. We will, at the moment, look to continue in the other subjects to recruit potentially until the end of term, although we are starting to reach a bit of a crunch point with science as well. We've got about 6 physicists on interview next week. Yes, so your reaction, Heather. I'm not saying they're going to be particularly at the level that we want them to be at, and we won't recruit them, but the return...
We're on round 5 trying to appoint a physics teacher.
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
Advert number 5 now.
So the strength of recruitment is really important, and we still have a very high bar in terms of who we recruit. But also we are under pressure to get people into the system. So that's that. Marketing is a real high priority for us, and that's part of the challenge really of recruitment, is getting the right people in and making sure they know about us as a brand. We've also allocated more admin support for that, so you'll have had emails from Charlotte Hodgson before, but you might get more of those as we go forward. We're trying to also increase our presence on social media. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just take a couple of minutes. I'm quite conscious of time, but literally another quick straw poll. So I'm going to send you in the link in the chat in a second, a Microsoft form link. And it's basically asks you if you've got a banner up outside school, what social media channels your school uses, if you retweet posts from our Teaching School Hub or from our skit. It's just so we get an idea of what it is we're currently doing and what we could potentially be doing more of, or if we need to do things differently. So I'm just going to send that for you now. It's literally 6 questions, so it won't take very long at all. But if we just ask you to just fill that in quickly for me. Okay. I've got 3 responses in there, but if I leave you to just continue to fill that in, that if that's okay. We are, like I say, trying to increase the visibility of our brand. We're trying to get more people profiles, so that we have maybe one of our former associate teachers, maybe somebody who's a learning coach, our subject pedagogy leads, so that we actually get people out into social media so they can see actual real people doing real, experiencing the actual role that they're in. So we're going to do more of that. There's 2 things to just put in the chat as well to share with you, 2 more links. One is the recruitment and retention audit tool that we've used that Joe Gavin's developed for our Teaching School Hub. That is basically, we've asked all schools across the Teaching School Hub area to fill that in, which is just to audit what you're doing to support recruitment and retention. And that's not just for initial teacher training, that's for in general. The second one is a really excellent resource. It's a massive toolkit of resources, things that you can do as a school to support recruitment and retention of teachers. So just to point that out to you, if you weren't already aware of it, do have a look at it. And please do, if your school hasn't already, complete that recruitment and retention audit tool, because as a Teaching School Hub, it's very useful information for us. Have I missed anything, Catherine, about that? Okay, awesome. Right, lovely. So yeah, placement offers, and obviously, like we said before, we're aiming to sort of have as much stability as we can, and as much commitment as we can to offering as much as we can. And yeah, there is time and cost implications to that. And I know last year, particularly with the 20 hours, when everyone panicked about how we were going to do that, about you having conversations with head teachers so that they understand some of the challenges with ITT. So we're looking obviously to offer as many subjects as we can, preferably to offer placements for all 3 terms, trying to maintain the same learning coaches as far as we can, and also anticipating people who could potentially want to be learning coaches in the future. And then when cover is lighter in the summer, less of an issue, maybe people who are aspiring learning coaches and trying to get them almost pre-accredited with Tier 1. So if they do take it up in the future, we don't have to worry about rushing them through that training. So that's this. Again, this is me speaking in an ideal world. But professional coaches, what I'm going to do is send you the placement request spreadsheet. I'll send that out today. And can I ask you to return it by the 6th of June? That's the first week back after half term. And we will obviously need the names of the learning coaches that you've assigned for each subject, because then if they are new, we would need to then invite them to that Tier 1 training on the 4th of July. And obviously I'll copy you in to those invites. And if there's any reason why you don't want me to invite a certain person, obviously just let me know. If you're here in the meeting today and you're not an ATLP school, again, you'll need to decide if you're able to release people for the 4th of July, because it probably won't be a training day for you. But like I said, we will offer another date in September. We're trying to provisionally allocate people to placements as early as we can. For Prince Henry's, that's already done in advance, so this doesn't really apply to you. But I will also send the partnership agreement out. But remember, please, that it's the head teacher's signature we need on it. And when I send that out, I've made the deadline a little bit longer, but we'd need to have those back from every single school that we work with by the 4th of July. So you can do that as quick as you like, really. Yeah, and then we'll look at placement requests and whether there's a Tier 1 trained mentor in place or to be in place. And then we will use that to start to think about placements. But there are extra challenges, as I'm sure you're aware, which is whether we stay open or not, where they live, whether they can drive. We had quite a lot of non-drivers this year, which actually made it logistically really difficult for us. And so, yeah, we'd love to be able to make promises that we would definitely send you a physicist, or that we would definitely send you a maths teacher or whatever. But we do try to do our best to satisfy your requests, but we can't guarantee. We may continue to recruit over the summer in certain subjects. So the request form's slightly different this year, not massively different, but all you need to put into it is, in those grey boxes, is your school name and your details, and then either put a 1 or potentially a 2 in each of the grey boxes in the grid for either the first and last placement or the middle one, and that will change colour. And then the end column, whether the learning coaches are new or not. I mean, I do have that information, but just to confirm. And then obviously the name of the learning coach, and more importantly, that their email address is correct. Because when we send out large communications, we sometimes get bounce backs. The other thing I was just going to stress is that if you put, say, for example, French and Spanish, and you put 1 in both boxes, but you only really can take 1 at a time, just put that in the comment box at the bottom. So there's an opportunity at the bottom to write any extra notes. Like, for example, we can't have a biologist, but we could have a chemist or a physicist. Those kind of things are really helpful information for us to have when we're sort of building that bigger picture. Any questions on that at all? This is a bit of a tight turnaround because it's 2 more weeks till half term, and then 1 week after that until it's due in. But we kind of need to know what we're dealing with as soon as we can, really. And I'll just put an exemplar in there for you just to see what it looks like when it's completed. Okay, moving on to employment. If you are looking for teachers for September, we still have associate teachers seeking employment. We've got 1 English, 2 history, maths, and so on. Prince Henry's, we're still looking to recruit. We have a geographer, a historian, and 2 PE that currently don't have a job for September. But it's brilliant to see that, like, out of the whole cohort, 77% have now got jobs within our placement schools for September, which is fantastic. I'm really, really pleased about that. Any questions to do with employment? Okie doke. I will, literally with 5 minutes to go, I'm going to just speak very quickly about the calendar. It hasn't changed massively in terms of structure, apart from what we talked about the ITAPs, and you'll see there's that extra day of behaviour in orange. There's the Thursday has now become a core training day twice. That's in the first half term, but other than that, nothing has changed. The second half term, there's the back end of the ITAP about checking for understanding, but again, nothing has changed there. The same in the second term, there's still a week where they're with us, and then on placement school, we've changed the ITAP again there to have that bookended Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and that takes us up to Easter. Because of the changes, the movement of Easter, what we've done now is move the Key Stage 2 experience, the special school experience, to the other side of Easter, because otherwise they weren't in their placement school for long enough. And you'll see there, it's the pink is 6 days. This isn't for Prince Henry so much. This is more just for Arthur because we've got a bigger cohort. We can't put as many people into a special school in one go as we did this year because it was quite a bit overwhelming. So we're actually going to split the cohort into 3 for next year. So they'll do 2 days in special school, 2 days in a primary school, and then 2 days they'll be in placement, but that will have to be on a bit of a rotation. So a little bit of a messy start to that final placement. And then the intentional scaffolding, we've moved the first day into a Friday, and we were going to do that as centre-based training so that we do actually give them some face-to-face input before they start doing the activities in school that they've been doing this week. Nearly at the end. So professional coaches, just to note, on the right-hand side, I've put some dates for next year when we hold the PES sessions at your school. If there's anyone that's not on that list that wants to have us for a day, please let me know and I'll try and book it in. But can you also just let me know that those dates are okay? Because I just need to confirm that that is possible, if you wouldn't mind. And the last thing is external examiner. So she's coming next week. She's spending Tuesday at Prince Henry. She's spending Wednesday looking at primary phase. Thursday she will be with us in the secondary route. Just to answer your questions, wonderful news, Dave, about the historians. Fantastic. If you could just update the tracker for me so that I know where they're going, that'd be fab. And also, Sophie, no, I haven't contacted any teachers about coming over for the day. I was hoping that I could do that through you, if that would be okay. I've put the list of schools that we work with in the top right hand corner. Those are our Prince Henry's ITT schools that we work with. Those are the Arthur Terry schools that we work with. We're really pleased to have Erasmus Darwin Academy in Burntwood back on board for next year. We're also working with, we haven't worked with them for a few years now, we're working with North Birmingham Academy, and next week I'm going to visit a school in Smethwick, which is Holly Lodge High School, which is a good school. We will be potentially working with them as well, so we are expanding our capacity in that way. Meetings for next year, professional coach meetings, I've put the dates on there for you so that you've got those to put in your calendar. I probably will wait till September, but I'll send you meeting links out, Teams meeting links out for those. And then the learning coach meetings, I've got just put that there for your reference, as to when we're expecting all learning coaches to come on our online meetings, the subject specific ones. And the last one of those for this year is actually Tuesday the 13th, it's next week, from 4 till 5. So can you remind your learning coaches that they are expected to be there? And of course, you will be able to claim an hour of funding for the people that do attend that, as well as in addition to things they've accrued over the academic year so far. Which really is just to say a massive thank you, as always, and I say it all the time, but I do mean it. It's been a really successful year for us. We've had a really good, productive relationship with Prince Henry's, and all their subject leads are coming over tomorrow to spend the day with us, which is really exciting. We love working with them, and you know, we couldn't do it without you, and all the work that you do in placement schools. Particularly this year, we've had challenges of tier 1 training to do. We've had challenges with making sure the ITAPs are impactful. But next year, we're hoping to not make any significant changes, but because the DFE might try to derail that, but we will do our best to not make massive changes for next year. Any other business from anybody else? It's bang on 5 o'clock. No? All right then. Well, I'm sure we'll see you at some point when we come out to visit, but if we don't, have a lovely remainder of the rest of the year, and thank you for coming along tonight.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks a lot.
Paul. Sorry I was
Bye.
late. Thank you. Bye.
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 No problem. Bye.
There we go. That was good timing, Paul. Well done. 5 o'clock on the nose.
I know. Yeah, that was accidental, really. Yeah. Sometimes it just works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you
It's
for
nice
doing
to have
the
that bit.
curriculum.
I was just
What,
saying
sorry?
it's good. It's good to do, you know, a bit of that engagement through the chat and through those little surveys. Just broke it up a bit, didn't it? The discussions. Thought that worked quite
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for doing that. That document, the curriculum conversations thing for tomorrow. I've got an email ready to go. I've put the subject leads on it, and I've said, like, click on it, download a copy, and then at the end of tomorrow, you upload it to Teams.
well. I've
Just need
made a
to make
folder as well.
I was just going to say, I just need to make a folder.
Yeah, so it's in internal quality assurance. There's just a folder that says curriculum conversations, and I've printed off the longer prompts. So on that document, I just sort of shortened them just so that they were little word prompts. But I printed off the longer questions so that you know, if people want it, they've got a paper copy of it.
That'd be really helpful. Really helpful. I'll put the link then to that folder in the email, so that they've got everything they need. So
don't send that. When are you going to send that? Don't send it too early.
Oh, not till tomorrow. Not till we've had. Not till we've done that. Curriculum conversations is where is it? Just in curriculum conversations.
Yeah, there's 2 documents. The one is the form, and the one is the longer prompts.
Got it. And we want them to drop their copies of it into there, don't we?
Into that folder, yeah. If you put a naming convention as well, so their subject is first, because it makes it easier to see it.
It does. Yeah. All right.
So we're all good to go tomorrow. Don't think there's anything else.
Did you check about lunch?
That's done. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Brilliant. And did you just notice that Prince Henry just lost the English?
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Will do.
Right, then, so we're good to go then tomorrow. So you're doing the intro, Joe's doing like half an hour on deliberate practice, then I'm going to introduce the curriculum conversations, and then should just run itself then, shouldn't it, after that?
Yep. Yeah, bro. Okay, right, I'll see you tomorrow then.
See you tomorrow. Cheers, Paul. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.